Mess up anyone's morning commute to work. We'll talk about that later on too. In front of us is the curved blue Nuveen building. Nuveen up on the top right corner right there. That is the oldest building we have in Wolf Point. Not very old at all, dating back to the early 1980s. It made its grand debut in the legendary film Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That is where Ferris Bueller's father worked in that movie. If you have not seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, what are you doing? You're here in Chicago. Watch that movie. I promise you will not regret it. It is a fun one. You get to see, one, where you should go, and two, what Wolf Point used to look like in the 80s, which was a big parking lot. So I'm really glad that you're here in 2026, because now you can see Wolf Point to its fullest potential. Just past Lake Street, to the left-hand side of the boat, is a red brick building. This is an important location in American history. Not so much of an important building. The original building burnt down in in 1869, just a couple of years before the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. But this is the location of where Abraham Lincoln was nominated for his presidential campaign in 1860. May 18th, 1860, he was nominated right here on the South Branch. Obviously changed the course of American history forever. Just for a moment, on the other side, we will also see ourselves on the slanted walls of 150 North Riverside. Great example of contextualism, reflecting the city back onto itself. A little photo op. Now, I know we may not trust 150 North Riverside quite yet, because I haven't told you how it works, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. I'm going to talk about something else I don't trust, the Boeing building. Coming up here to the right, opened in 1990 as the Morton Salt Company headquarters. Morton Salt Company. As we pass underneath Randolph Street, we'll look straight up at that top roof, and we will see some holes, some circles in that roof. The same way that Harry Weiss has his sails on their river cottages. Up here we've got a big salt shaker for the Morton Salt Company, a big table salt. Pretty creative, postmodernism.
There's a huge building all built for singing. There's a huge building all built for singing. The building has offices all for money. And the seating seats about 3,200. The Civic Opera Building. Thank you so much. There we go, surprise. The Civic Opera Building was built in 1929, just 2 weeks after the stock market crash. Very lucky to still have this building around. Graham Anderson, Probst and White went on a little bit of a bad run there. 1929, Civic Opera. 1930, Merchandise Mart. Those office spaces all around the Civic Opera, they pay rents to the Lyric Opera of Chicago. That's the current company of the Civic, as well as the Joffrey Ballet. That's the ballet company of the Civic. They've been the company since the 1950s. You can go see some amazing ballet right now at Eugene Onegin. I don't know what it is, but I bet it's awesome. To the right is a black boxy building, very much the opposite of that Art Deco in Gateway Center 1. There is 4 of these Gateway Centers, so stay with me here. Gateway Center 1, black building. Gateway Center 2, black building. Gateway Center 3, white building. Gateway Center 4, curved building. Okay, this is kind of an architectural time machine. Let me show you how Gateway Center 1 and 2 are from 1965 and 1967. They exhibit black box modernism. Black box modernism was born about 20 years after World War II and about 30 years after the Great Depression. Architects were burned, investors were scarred. They did not want to dump their money into a beautiful looking building like an Art Deco and then lose it all again. Another economic tragedy like the Great Depression. So this era was really defined by its cheap building expenses, reliability, functionality, bare bones basic. That was the name of the game.
Then in 1971, we get Gateway Center 3. We are slowly pulling ourselves out of that funk that we were in the 1960s. We can add some color to our buildings. White. So, baby steps, but we are getting there. We can also add some depth, some dynamics to our buildings with some pillars that extend from the outside. This is now a new Bauhaus style of architecture, also known as the International style. You can kind of see the reference to the white frame on the Marina City. Now, the new Bauhaus School of Architecture is still in operation here in Chicago. It is housed within IIT, the Illinois Institute of Technology. So if you got any budding architects here on this boat, they can go to IIT and check out the new Bauhaus School of Architecture. Then 1986, we are back in business, baby. We can party once again. We can add a curve to our buildings. We can have those steel frames move backwards, those windows move forwards, and now we're going into contextualism. So we are black box modernist, new Bauhaus, and contextualist architecture. Summer, man. Then coming on to the left, another black box modernist building with a gray stripe going up the middle, 300 South Wacker. We used to completely ignore 300 South Wacker. We just keep moving, talk about the old Chicago post office, and they were very sad about this. They were heartbroken. They just had to watch us go by every time, not talk about them. They decided to take fate into their own hands, and in 2015, they decided to spend $800,000 to put an accurate depiction of the Chicago River on its walls with that big red "You Are Here" symbol in the middle. And it works. We talk about them on every tour now. Sometimes I can see the workers come to the windows and smile and beam with pride as I finally talk about their building. It's nice. Directed to the right, this is a little commemoration of the fact that Route 66 now officially starts at Navy Pier and goes from pier to pier, Illinois to California. And that was an old Chicago L track that went over top of south of Jackson Boulevard. The old Chicago Post Office, or the old Main Post Office, right here to the right, spanning down the South Branch, built by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. You may recognize it from the 2011 film, The Dark Knight. The opening scene of that Batman movie has the Joker zipline from Gateway Center 4 over to the old Chicago Post Office, pull off a big bank heist, drive a school bus on the side of that building. That movie is shot all over Chicago. So if you need another movie night, maybe after Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I would recommend watching The Dark Knight, even if you've seen it before. First of all, sick movie. Second of all, you get to watch it and say, oh, I know where that is, I know where that is, I know where that is. Do it. There's also the headquarters for Optimus Prime and Transformers Dark of the Moon. Awesome movie. 8-year-old Eric loves this building. 22-year-old Eric loves this building because it's really cool. It's a massive post office, so big that on the top, on the roof, they have a 3.5-acre park for the workers that they can go to on their lunch break. It was built for Sears and Montgomery Ward. They were on the frontier of their mail order shipping business. Think like the first iteration of Amazon. They chose Chicago as their main hub because we had our railroads. And if the Mississippi River was the main artery of American commerce in the late 19th and early 20th century, well then Chicago was our nervous system because we had so many railroads, west, east, north, and south out of the city. People, especially on the western frontier states, had to be clothed and fed and sheltered. They could order full-sized homes and churches and shops from this Sears catalog, which would be built here in Chicago on the south side at our acres and acres of lumber yards. The Wooden City is what it was called. Packed up onto a train, sent out west to Washington, Idaho, California, Montana, Oregon, places like that. If you ever watch those old Wild West movies with the swinging saloon doors and the flapping wooden signs in the wind of the ghost town, that is the architectural style coming from Chicago during that time. They did that for actually a very long time. You can still see Sears Roebuck homes, especially in Washington. I know I grew up around a lot of them. Now, thankfully, one night in October of 1871, the wind was blowing to the northeast, so none of those lumber yards were touched during the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Really allowed us to rebound the way that we did. Chicago looks a lot different now than it did 150 years ago, so allow me to paint a picture. It's October, and Chicago is dry, very dry. 1 inch of rainfall over 3 months, kind of dry. Downtown is lined with wooden sidewalks. There is no paved streets. It is all dirt roads. When it would rain, horses would get stuck knee deep in that marshy, muddy swamp dirt. They would be unable to move. Our first sanitation system was a group of pigs that walked around downtown eating up all the trash. There was no lakefront. It is rows and rows and rows of railroads, constant clanging and rumbling from all of the commerce going to and from Chicago using those railroads. Surrounding downtown is miles of low-income, cheaply made wooden homes, very closely put together. A lot of tenement housing for the immigrant population flocking to Chicago to capitalize on that industrial boom. From the year 1836 to 1871, our population went from 300 to 300,000 people. By the year 1900, we had 1.7 million people. Over a span of 70 years, 300 to 1.7 million. The river is absolutely filthy. Trash and oil and grease skims its surface. There are reports of the river turning a maroon color of red with the refuse and the waste that the meatpacking industry would throw into the river after they were done with their animals. The wind was whipping, and firefighters were already fatigued by fighting fires all around Chicago, but in a farm on the west side of town, pretty much directly to your right, just down a couple blocks onto Coven Street, there lives an Irish immigrant by the name of Catherine O'Leary. Now, as the story goes, Catherine O'Leary is tending to her cow. Her cow's name is Daisy. And as the story goes, Daisy kicks over the gas lamp that they are working by. That sets fire to the wood and the hay of this barn, and of course, firefighters are called. But by the time they arrive, it is just too late. Those cramped living conditions, those dry weather conditions, those high winds, they made this a perfect storm for the fire to spread like crazy. That fire burns over 4 miles of this city. That's here at the Lincoln Park Zoo, which at that time was a cemetery. There are reports of people throwing their belongings as well as themselves into open graves to escape the fire with varying degrees of success. The fat and oil skimming the surface of the Chicago River causes the river to catch on fire. At that time, the river was heading straight out into Lake Michigan, so it was all coming to downtown. Only a couple of buildings are left from pre-fire, one of those being the water tower on the north-hand side of downtown on Michigan Avenue. Really served as a beacon of hope and revitalization for the city. When all is said and done, 90,000 of those 300,000 people are left homeless. That is 1/3 of the city's population at the time. 300 people lose their lives. Now, can you imagine being Mrs. O'Leary? The truth is, the reason I kept saying as the story goes is because Mrs. O'Leary was probably sleeping at the time that the fire broke out. The today anti-Irish, anti-immigrant sentiments of the time, she is put at the center of this public rumor. She has got a lot of angry Chicagoans on her doorstep looking for somebody to blame. She is not publicly wiped, publicly exonerated from this rumor until 1997, over 120 years after the Chicago fire. The city finally says, Mrs. O'Leary, not your fault. Little late, if you ask me. Little late if you ask Mrs. O'Leary. She died in 1895. But there's some good that came out of the Chicago fire. We get our nickname, the Second City. I've heard that before, Second City. We get that nickname from a jealous, that same jealous, New York reporter who said that we talked a lot. He said that we are always trying to be New York. We will never be New York. We will always be the Second City. Whatever, man. Sticks and stones may break my bones. Words can never hurt me. I like to repurpose that narrative a little bit. I like to say that we are called the Second City because Chicago was brought to the ground, but that caused architects from all over the world to flock here, to build it back up into a city that is better now than it was before that fire. You're looking at Chicago 2.0. The River City on the right-hand side of the riverbanks, Bertrand Goldberg, and those cylindrical walls. And then to the left is the old Union Powerhouse Station. I'm told it looks a lot like a building in London, which is definitely on purpose. It's another power station. This used to serve as the main power station for all of the railroads around here, built by Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White in a neo-industrialist style. Now, you know the drill. We'll hop off the microphone again.